Hi everyone. Today I'm going to continue on with my discussions of recent Criterion releases in accordance with or alongside the Barnes & Noble half-price Criterion sale for the month of November 2022. And I noticed there was a couple of recent releases that were also playing on the Criterion channel, and one of them was Cure. Cure just came out maybe not even 2 weeks ago, but on November 1st, Cure, the Kiyoshi Kurosawa thriller, appeared on the channel with all the supplements, and there's lots of supplements on Cure. So I was planning on buying Cure, but then I thought, geez, I'll save up, I'll save $20 and maybe get something else. But there was another film, the film I want to talk about today, which is CORBEAU. And CORBEAU is from 1943, directed by Henri-Georges Clouzot. And that's been on the channel ever since I can remember. And I did see it 2 or 3 years ago, and it didn't look in the best of shape. Well, now we have a new 4K restoration that's on the Blu-ray. I watched it on the Criterion channel. It looked absolutely great to my untutored eyes on the channel. Plus, there's not many supplements to this. I don't think they added anything to it. So CORBEAU is basically an upgrade, but a well-deserved upgrade, because CORBEAU, the Raven, is a very, very important and very interesting film that was made during the German occupation, made in Paris during the German occupation. Clouzot had worked in Germany before the war, came back the early 1930s, came back to France, and after an illness, a long illness, he was basically destitute. So he was offered, the Germans, Goebbels had a friend of his who Clouzot knew from working in Germany, start a film production company in Paris that would be controlled by a German producer. So Clouzot was put in charge of writing, but then became a writer-director. And what they were looking for was light, frothy comedies that had no social significance, and especially no political significance. Light and frothy, well, Clouzot is not the man to go for light and frothy. He's probably the cinema's great misanthrope. He has a dark and stark vision of life and human beings. This is his second film. Now, his previous film, which is also on the Criterion channel, I'm not going to even attempt to say the French title, but it's a murder detective story, it's not as dark. It's still dark. I don't think Clouzot could make a film that wasn't dark, but it's much lighter. And this one, CORBEAU, is not the Raven. So we see a stark black and white cinematography. We see people even sort of like changing, resembling ravens, resembling birds. The black and white cinematography in this restoration is fantastic. The story, which was based on an actual event in the 1920s in France, is about a poison pen campaign. Not just one letter, but many letters. And mostly it's a smear campaign against a local doctor. He's not from the area, he's come from the outside, but he's a very good doctor. He has a good reputation with people, but there's a smear campaign against him, especially a smear campaign that intimates that he is an abortionist. But this poison pen becomes a town-wide phenomenon. And this is a town, you feel sort of the isolation of the town. It doesn't really have any specific time period. And everybody becomes exposed. Everybody's secrets are revealed as this poison pen campaign goes on. And it's dark, but it's also suspenseful. So one thing you can rely on with Clouzot is even if his kind of morbid view of life is a bit much at times, but there's suspense, there's tension. Who is this? Who is writing these poison pen letters? We have many candidates within this town. And the movie was a big hit when it came out. Now, this is during the war, but the Germans didn't like it. They didn't like it at all. So eventually it was banned. And I mean, the reason they didn't like it is because the movie seemed to be against this kind of anonymous informers, which was exactly what the Nazis wanted French people to do, to collaborate. Tell us these people's secrets. We want to know. This film was casting casting that form of human behavior as something evil. So the film was then banned, and Clouzot was fired. For me, Clouzot's one of the most interesting facets of Clouzot's movies, and we see it very much in La CORBEAU, is the way he depicts sexual desire. Sexual desire is a form of madness. It's like a battlefield. The relationships between men and women. So, and if you want to, I cannot pass up a chance to tout one of my favorite Clouzot movies, maybe one of my favorite L'Amour Fou film of all time, which is Manon, which came out around 1950, and this is a updated the post-World War II from Abbe Lescaut's, I don't know, what is it, it's 18th, 17th century novel. And I mean, it's just so intense. This is just an amazing film. It's an Arrow Academy release. But well, this artistic vision of Clouzot's, this neurotic vision. Does art come from neurotic people? Neurotic people create art. Is that part of the impulse to create art? And with Clouzot's biography, he spent 4 years in an institution battling tuberculosis, and he thought he was going to die, and he expected to die, but he survived, and certainly I would think that experience has really clouded his vision, or at least embellished what he felt about life beforehand. And he created lots of tension on the set. So Pierre Fresnay, who plays Dr. Germain in this film, he had also appeared as the detective in Clouzot's first film, and they had gotten along, but they didn't get along well on this film. Clouzot on set was just he could be tyrannical. He wanted tension. He thought that would bring out all the emotions. If everybody's on edge, Fresnay didn't particularly like that, and it was too much. But you can see the results of it in his performance, because he looks out of sorts in almost every scene. Pierre Fresnay played Marius in Marcel Pagnol's Fanny and Marius trilogy in the early 1930s, a big star at the time. So then there's the post-war. La CORBEAU had been banned, and now with the post-war era, Clouzot was accused with about, I think, 6 or 7 other directors of being a collaborationist, because he worked for this German company, which was called Continental Pictures, I believe, which has a eerily similar logo to it's almost exactly the same as the Criterion logo. So he went on a sort of trial, and he became he was banned for life, to make films for life. But then Jean-Paul Sartre, Jean Cocteau, many other directors came to his defense. So that lifetime ban for Clouzot was reduced to 2 years. Now in the supplements we get in the very meager supplements, but one of them is great because it's Bernard Tavernier, a discussion with him about Clouzot's career. Tavernier, a director of a terrific film director, but he was also an amazing film historian. I mean, he really can bring clarity to what can be very kind of unusual circumstances, and especially probably difficult for Americans to understand who were never occupied by another country. And I would, there's a couple of films out of his history of French cinema, very much recommended to me, because Tavernier, who unfortunately we lost not that long ago. And then the only other extra is 8 minutes of excerpts from a longer documentary where we do get a bit, maybe half of that time is seeing Clouzot with his sort of forbidding eyebrows. But he can be funny. I've seen him in other interviews too. He can be funny, and in fact, there is humor in the darkness of his vision. Within La Corbeau, there is some humor there, and in fact, I think you can even say that his pitiless view of human beings itself is kind of funny. I mean, but it's consistent, but it sort of takes you back, and you can see it both as a vision of darkness and a vision of kind of comic view of man's or human beings' insufficiencies in their relationships with other people. So, but there is, if you have the Criterion channel, there's a 60-minute documentary on there, which I think was a supplement for another film, maybe The Wages of Fear. That's really excellent. It covers Clouzot's entire career and interviews later on in life, maybe from 1990s, 80s, or 90s, where many of the actors and people who worked with him comment on his very strange behavior on set. I mentioned the Pierre Fresnay being disenchanted with Clouzot on set. There's a great story that Brigitte Bardot talks about. She made La Vérité with Clouzot, and she has this weird, this is a movie where Brigitte Bardot has to act. I mean, she has to give a performance. And in La Vérité, she has to give a big emotional courtroom scene, and she wasn't getting it, and so Clouzot, in his tyrannical, the director is God, tries a different tactic, and he steps on it. She's barefoot on set. He steps on her feet and gives her a slap, which he had done with actresses many times before. Bardot slapped him back twice and then kneed him in the balls, as she says, ran off. And but she did come back, and she said, "But I didn't do that scene out of terror of Mr. Clouzot. I did it from within. I don't need to be bullied to be a good actress." Certainly nowadays, Clouzot, on his first film that he exhibited that kind of behavior, that would be his last film. But actors put up with him. Again, it was the director is God era. And plus, everybody knew that despite how he could be on the set, he had real talent and was making very significant films. So that's La Corbeau, and then I'm going to continue on next week. I'm going to do Cure. I'm watching it on the channel. I save myself $20, buy something else. Next week will be Cure, Adam Magoyan's Exotica, and Cassie Lemon's Eve's Bayou. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.